What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty podcast presented by the Fantasy Holics, coming at you live on X, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm Fatboy Bo. That is Fatboy Brant. As the headline of the episode says, we're going to talk about some rookie quarterbacks today, some dudes that we like in this year's NFL draft. And yes, there will be some quarterbacks that make an impact out of this draft. But before we do, there is some small snippets of actual NFL news happening at this time. They're both kind of big, and I didn't talk about both of them before the show, only one of them. So I don't know if you saw the other one. We'll get to that one in a minute. Big news, Puka Nacua getting himself into some rehab. Definitely a situation to potentially keep your eye on if you've got Puka in fantasy, because he's a big dude when he plays. But if this is something that continues into the season, you could see him potentially miss some time to get himself right, which he needed to do some things. He was saying some outlandish comments and some things of that nature. So good for Puka to get himself some help. But that's definitely one to keep your eye on potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. It is kind of big news for fantasy. It's good for the guy to go get some help and everything else. I never want to root for anybody to be bad. Yes, he's a Ram and everything else, but never want to root negativity on that. It's good for him to go get some help. It is big fantasy news because his name's all over right now on one of the dead times of football. So I don't think the NFL will hit him with any repercussions of a suspension or anything else, but it's a possibility. Like you're all over because it's dead time in the NFL almost, where it's, coaches meetings and stuff like that. And you're all over the news. I don't think they will, but that is a possibility. So definitely keep your eye on it. I mean, we saw Rasheed Rice almost go a whole year before he finally saw his, and other players like that. But I do think that it's good for him.
I'm less worried about a suspension personally, and him saying, "Hey, I need more time to get this done. I'm not ready yet," and potentially being, delayed for his start of the season. And maybe you get to a situation where it ends up being such a thing like Brandon Ayuk. I'm not playing at all. I'm taking my ball and going home. Again, way early in the offseason, April 1st. Today, obviously, way early to be getting that far ahead. But that's where my brain goes, is being nervous about him for the upcoming season.
I just hope for everybody that does have him, that's not a superpower. You used to always hear about Marshawn Lynch taking a couple shots of Hennessy before he played. So I really hope that's not his superpower on the field, and we start to see a digression of him.
You and I rode him to a co-own championship this year. So I for that team, I hope you're right. The other big one is quarterback news, which fits the trend of this show, talking about a guy who's been really relevant for many years as the super fantasy option at the quarterback position. A lot of rumblings in Philly about a lot of people in that organization being really unhappy with Jalen Hurts. News articles kind of came out back to back today that they were going to try to simplify that offense because he struggles to grasp it a little bit. And then an anonymous Eagles coach came out and said he's just downright uncoachable. So definitely some big news coming out. Again, downtime. Sometimes things just get blown way bigger or blown out of proportion this time of year. But if that ends up being the case, that's definitely something interesting to keep your eye on, because again, there is talks about the tush push getting banned this year. The Eagles offense kind of took a small step back last year. That could be one that would be worth monitoring if you own Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, definitely. And this is a guy that you kind of could see the uncoachableness of him as he continued to be the same kind of way game in and game out, even when they were going through losing streaks or having bad games and having to come back late. You definitely could see that he definitely could be very uncoachable. Obviously, I'm not him. I'm not one of his coaches. I don't know for sure. And like you said, it could just be getting blown up bigger than it is because of dead time. But you definitely could see small glimpses of that. So I do think this is something to keep an eye on. I've had Hurts in our home league since we've started this. It's been him and Burrow. I hope nothing. I hope he can still hang up fantasy points because I have started him all the time. Luckily, I do have something that I can fall back on if so. But yeah, this is definitely something to keep your eye on.
Yeah, again, this time of the year, this is the kind of news stories we get. They're usually nothing great. Still some decent names out there for fantasy. Still some names potentially being talked about to be traded draft night, which does bring me to this portion as well. The Fantasy Holics team will be covering the live draft this year. So instant reaction, instant fantasy implications. Brant and I will cover a large portion of that. I believe some of the guys from the Blood, Sweat, and Tears podcast may join in and help out a little bit as well. Long night. Brant and I may take some snack breaks. We may take some potty breaks. You just never know what's going to happen. But if you want to come hang out and watch the NFL draft, you can do so and hang out with the Fatboys. Definitely be talking some food and stuff along with that. But that is something to talk about. And it's only 23 days away from now. So it's time to start seriously getting in and doing your research, because a lot of dynasty leagues do draft shortly after the NFL draft.
Yeah, absolutely. It is draft time over the next 3 weeks. We're going to be covering quarterbacks this week. We're going to hit some running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. We're going to start covering our top 5 to 10 guys at each position going in, and possibly some other names. It's a big next 3 weeks as you do prepare, because like you said, a lot of people, you got that Thursday, Friday, Saturday draft. Sunday after the draft, a lot of dynasty leagues draft. I know we like to get together and do ours later on in the summer. We like to use a pool or get to a pool, and we never seem to actually get to use it during our drafts, but we like to be at a house and have that option. But yeah, no, I do know a lot of people do draft that following Sunday, and you got to have your research in, because you got to know about these guys, not just their landing spots, because we saw a couple years ago, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. A lot of people didn't really know a lot about him. Oh, Patrick Mahomes wanted him. Well, never really panned out. And he jumped into the early first round of most rookie drafts
over guys like Jonathan Taylor and DeAndre Swift, who have had much better careers from the running back position. So yeah, it's one of those things that sometimes these guys take up and we fade our research a little bit, or sometimes we do a lot of research on a guy and they fall a little bit later, and all of a sudden we're out on them, and in actuality they end up being just fine as well. So got to do a little research, got to trust your gut a little bit. And kind of stick to that. Obviously, it has to be somewhat fluid, but yeah, it's this time of year where we really start making our bread and butter for later in the season. So let's get into these quarterbacks for this week's episode, Brant. We got 5. We're going to talk about each. We talked about it a little bit pre-show. There are some discrepancies between the two of us, so we'll talk about those as we get into them. But let's start with the consensus number 1. You and I both have the same one as everybody else in the world. We both have Fernando Mendoza, national champion, Heisman winner from Indiana. So tell me your thoughts on Fernando, Brant.
Hang on. Sorry, I had to put my notes on 2 different things. Most likely number 1 pick going to the Raiders. He's going to get some good weapons in Ginty and Bowers there, and some young weapons too. I'm going to completely brain fart on all the names there, but there are some good young weapons.
Deontay Thornton, Jacoby Myers, left it for Jacksonville. So yeah, I mean it's definitely one of those spots that there are some pieces.
Yeah, and I know you got a little more stats than I do. I'm going to talk about some of his strengths. He finds the soft spots pre-snap. He's very good at finding those soft spots in the pre-snap and getting good protection and everybody lined up. He likes to operate in the RPO, which is, Kubiak's game. He loves the play action and the RPO. So that's going to be good for him and getting right into that system. I think he's a day 1 starter on that team. And he can use his legs to get the first down. He's not going to impress anybody with his scrambling ability or anything, but he will turn. He's kind of like a Drake May type in my mind, where he's not going to take off on design runs, but he'll take off and get that first down for you. And he'll be good for that. He did play in a weak Indiana system that made it real easy for some completions. If you look at some of these games, the system is great for quarterbacks, the way that they run it. He needs to work on his eye manipulation. He tends to stare down his number 1 go-to guy of the routes before going through his progressions, or staring down whoever he's throwing at. And that's tough in the NFL. If you're going to stare him down, you're going to get picked off quite a bit. And like I said, he's not a dynamic scrambler. He's not going to wow you with the Konami code and score, 30, 40 fantasy points because he's rushing for 5-6 touchdowns a game, or, 50, 60 yards plus 400 through the air. He's not going to wow you. I do think he's a day 1 starter. And I do think that he's a guy that will, after year 2, because I think there's going to be a lot of bumps in the roads with that Raiders team. I think year 2, I think you'll be talking about him as a top 24 quarterback. So a good starting quarterback for Superflex.
Yeah, I'm going to say this, and I'll start this. This is my trend for Fernando, excuse me. Him being the number one quarterback in this class really just shows how weak this quarterback class is, in my opinion. This guy's a game manager through and through. There's nothing flashy or super, knock you down about his game. And honestly, anytime you watch him do an interview, it's kind of cringy. Reminds me of a Russell Wilson where everything just seems really fake when he's talking. Hopefully I'm wrong, and the kid ends up having a really good career, obviously. But I just feel like there's a definite chance that there's a better quarterback in this draft class than Fernando Mendoza. This class reminds me an awful lot of the Desmond Ridder, Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, and then ultimately Brock Purdy draft, where the last quarterback taken in the draft or the last player in the draft ends up being the best, and the other ones are kind of just journeymen that kind of do ride the circuit a little bit. But yeah, 6'5", 225 pounds, so obviously he's got a good frame for the NFL. 68.6 career completion percentage in college does point to having some success in the NFL as well. Obviously, if you can get the ball into your playmakers' hands, they're going to do a lot for you. The problem for me is, 71 career touchdowns passing. Joe Burrow had that almost in his Heisman winning season at LSU. So definitely a big difference there in elite level quarterbacks. You alluded to it. He does have some rushing upside, 11 rushing touchdowns in his collegiate career. So he can do it. He's capable. I tell you, I don't necessarily love the comp, but I think he reminds me a lot of a younger version of a guy who it sounds like maybe paired with him in Las Vegas. He reminds me a lot of a Kirk Cousins type player. Kirk can break a pocket and make a play with his legs if he absolutely has to. Pretty accurate with the ball. Not going to wow anybody with a deep ball. Not going to be anything super flashy, but can get some wins and some can lead some good teams. But again, I just don't see a Hall of Fame level quarterback here with Fernando Mendoza. But again, I think this class is pretty weak. So there you go. Consensus number one between the two Fat Boys. Move on to number two. This is also a consensus position or consensus spot for us because it seems to be the way the NFL world is trending. It's Ty Simpson out of Alabama at number 2, Brant.
This is a guy that the more and more I watch, the more and more I actually do like him. And I think he could end up being the better quarterback in this class. I got, strengths and weaknesses. I'm going to start with the weaknesses on this one here. And he does look to sneak into the first round of the draft. A lot of people are mocking him to the Jets, I think it is, in a lot of mocks.
Jets and Cardinals.
Yeah, he's got raw talent. I do think that he's got some building blocks that he can really work on. And he looks like a very coachable kid. And I say kid, but you and me discussed this. I didn't realize this is the COVID class. Like these kids have been in college for a while and then they're not coming out too early. He needs some work on his deep ball, on that touch. His ball security, he fumbled 5 straight games over the stretch of the season. He struggles when that pocket collapses. He doesn't really know what to do and kind of doesn't secure it. He's trying to do too much when there's nothing to do. So he will need a little bit of work on that. And that comes with the building blocks. And I have him down as he's not going to be a fantasy relevant really his first year. I do think he will be a backup to a veteran. I do think he competes for some starts because of the teams he are going to, of the Jets and the Cardinals. I do think he'll have to compete with somebody for that. And I do think he sees some start. I don't know how I feel about his fantasy landscape for year one. Some of his strengths is he does have good pocket presence, minus the fact he doesn't really know what to do with it. It collapses, but he does slide up and move side to side pretty well and makes it tough to collapse on him. He's got a quick release and he uses a lot of motion to disguise the coverage or to diagnose the coverages and everything prior to the snap. And he adjusts his line very, very well. He takes good command of the huddle and the line, which is a good thing coming out of college to show that hey, I'm ready to be a leader on the field. And this is one of the reasons I do think that he will compete to start later in the year. Like I said, I do think he's going to back somebody up for a little bit, but he could be a starter quicker than a lot of us will probably anticipate.
Yeah. So again, for me, not super sold on Ty Simpson. I'm really like the kind of the first quarterback of the Kellen DeBoer era there in Bama. But out of the top 5 guys I've gotten written down, and I believe your top 5 guys as well, Ty Simpson is the most unknown out of all of them because he's only had so few starts compared to the rest of this class. A lot of the rest of this class was those 5-6 year quarterbacks from the COVID class that kept getting eligibility. 63.4% career completion percentage is pretty low. Again, really only a starter for like a year and a half. 28 touchdowns, nothing to write home about, and only 5 rushing touchdowns. So again, not super mobile. The comp on this, honestly, I feel like this is the best comp I've come up with all offseason. Ty Simpson reminds me a lot of Ryan Tannehill. He may have some games in the NFL where it's like, wait, who just did what? But then all of a sudden everybody will rush out to pick him up in fantasy, and for the next 6 weeks you roster him because you're like, but one time he did this, and he just is a roster clogger. I don't see anything super attractive here. Best case for Ty Simpson, for me personally, best case, he goes to Arizona and gets paired with Trey McBride and Marvin Harris and Michael Wilson and those guys. He goes to the Jets. He's a
Jets quarterback.
He is a prototypical Jets quarterback.
Yeah.
Somebody I don't care about. Honestly, I'm not super over the moon with Ty Simpson. Again, I think he's going to be a capable pro, but I'm not, for fantasy purposes. When we look at these guys, 1 and 2 for me are going to be okay real world quarterbacks. I don't see a whole lot of the fantasy world for these guys. So again, for me, Ty Simpson, too unknown. And what we do know about him doesn't jump off the page at me. So I'm kind of very out on him right now. I could see myself potentially being talked into him again in Arizona just because of the weapons around him. But when you consider some of the other landing spots that he's been linked to, I don't like his skill set much. So, all right, let's move into number 3. This is our first discrepancy. So I will let you go first.
I was going to let you go first because you have my guy at number 4, so we'll be able to feed right into that.
All right, that works. So yes, I do have Carson Beck at my number 3 spot. I know, Brant, you said you don't have him at all. Coming out of Miami this year, obviously from Georgia originally, 6'4", 220 pounds. This was a guy that kind of re-solidified himself. Everybody was kind of like down and out on him a little bit. He goes to Miami, and all of a sudden Miami's a college football finalist. They make a run into the national championship game, and is the most proven quarterback in this class because, again, he's been around forever and a day. 69.5% completion percentage in his career. Super accurate. Those are great numbers. That's what you want to see. Granted, when you're throwing to guys like George Pickens and some of the other stud wide receivers he had, Ladd McConkey, that makes a difference. 88 career touchdowns, does add 7 rushing touchdowns. So again, not the most prolific with his mobility, but again, we saw, for those of us that watched the college football playoff last year, we did see a little bit of how he can maneuver it when he needs to. Again, this is my favorite quarterback in the class as far as who I think will have the most fantasy impact. And again, I think, another really good comp. It reminds me of a Joe Flacco. And the memory we all have of Joe Flacco now, because he still continues to play, isn't as good as what it was in early Baltimore Joe Flacco. Big arm, could complete the passes everywhere with enough zip, also has touch. And if you remember right, Joe had some wheels that he could get out and make a play if he needed to. I think Carson Beck's the type of guy that's going to go, day 2 potentially to a landing spot where it's like maybe they have a quarterback, maybe they don't, and all of a sudden it's like week 6 or 7 and they're handing the reins off to this guy, and everybody in the world's going, wait a minute, it's Carson Beck time, and I think he hits the ground running. I think Carson Beck's going to have a good NFL career. I think he's going to be the most fantasy relevant out of this class.
Okay, absolutely. He has been proven in college. I wasn't sold on him. Like I said right off, I didn't really pay too much attention to the age. I just felt like he had been around for forever. And then you're like, yeah, all of them have. And then I started looking. I'm like, okay, you're not wrong. But yeah, he's a guy that's definitely going to come out and compete. I do have him outside of my top 5, but I do think that he's going to be a guy. He's a guy that I could see going into like Miami and trying to compete for that whole everything that's going on in there, or Minnesota as like you said, a day 2 pick going into Minnesota, competing with Kyler Murray and having some good weapons around him as well. So you get him some good weapons, like you said, it makes it really easy when you throw to those outstanding receivers that are in the NFL now. I do think that he gets a good landing spot, and I do think he's going to be a guy that's going to climb up some boards. And like you said, it's not going to wow you with his legs, but he's going to get you enough fantasy points to kind of put you over that tier with his legs of, can I start him? Can I use him as a flex start or a super flex start? Yeah, you probably can, because he's probably going to rush one in and get you a couple extra points.
You know where he's going to be the starter at by mid season next year, Brant?
Either one of the 2 teams I just said.
Pittsburgh. He'll be the Steelers' starting quarterback by the midway point of next season.
Might be week 1.
Well, I don't know.
Week
Mike
1, play
McCarthy's
1.
Awful high on Will Howard, so we'll see. But
week 1, play 1.
Could be. All right, take us away with your number 3.
This is the first time I'm going to butcher a name, because we talked about this, how I love to butcher names, and that's Cade Klubnik. Is that how you say it?
Klubnik.
Okay. Yeah. He's 6'2", 207. I told you prior to this, I'm going to mess up these names. I used other wording, not for the show, but I told you I was going to mess up these names today. 6'2", 207. He's got a quick trigger, quick release. He's got good touch on his deep balls, but that's going to lead into one of the weaknesses too. His deep ball doesn't go as deep as people think it is. A lot of the receivers had to come back to those deep balls, but he does have good touch putting it into the baskets once you figure out how far he can actually throw it. He works best with their RPO and play action. So, like I said, the Raiders would have been a good spot for him, but they're going to take that number 1 pick and run with that quarterback there. So he's a guy that he runs off the RPO and play action very well, and he's got good pocket awareness, and his toughness can't be doubted. He played behind one of the weakest lines of the ACC. Probably could put him down there in the NCAA, and he got hit a lot and everything else. And so he's tough. He's a tough quarterback, tough guy that's going to be, not willing to miss games. His post snap progression is one of his biggest weaknesses. He looks at his first read and then it's eyes down and I'm taking off. He doesn't like to look at his second and third. He's going to have to. You can't use your feet first. We saw how that works at times in the NFL. We saw Lamar Jackson had to change that as he progressed in his NFL career. And his pre-snap command, he doesn't read it pre-snap as well either. So he's going to have to figure that out. He trusts his legs over his arm, as I alluded to just a little while ago, or just a minute ago, that he looks at his first read and then he takes off. I think he's day 2, probably he might be an early day 3 pick, honestly. I think a lot of these quarterbacks are going to be sliding in the draft. So I think he's going to be an early day 3 pick. I think he'll compete for starts year 1. I don't think he's going to get any starts. You may see him come in and blow out games. I think he'll be number 2 on the depth chart. And with his legs and the ability to rush, if he finds a way to start, which I do think he will compete for starts, I think you could consider him in that bottom tier of tier 2 quarterbacks, or RB2 QB2s here in that super flex.
Not only butcher the name, but the position also.
I did.
Listen, I've got Cade at 4, so I'm just going to go ahead and roll real quick into my thoughts on him, and then I'll let you get your number 4 out of the way. My biggest concern with Cade is, does he crumble when the spotlight shines the brightest? There was a lot of talk about him being the guy in this quarterback class, actually for a couple of years after his outstanding freshman year at Clemson. Everybody, kind of the whole nation, was kind of looking at this guy like, is this the new face of the NFL? Is this going to be our next can't miss prospect, who then missed for the next couple of years and saw his draft capital tank? Second most proven quarterback in this class, in my mind, behind Carson Beck as far as collegiate. The big difference for me is a 5.5% completion difference between Carson Beck and Cade. Cade's down at 64%. The big difference for me and the other 3 names that we've talked about, him being our 4th name that we've mentioned to this point between the 2 of us, this is the biggest running cheat code, the biggest Konami code, if you will. 17 career rushing touchdowns. that we've talked about so far. I'm going to bring up somebody here in a moment that does put him to shame. But again, landing spot, very, 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 very important for Cade. I could see him being a career backup in the league that kind of hangs out for a long time, kind of like the guy I think he's comparable to. I've got him as a Case Keenum type, a guy that could, start and win some games, probably gets himself a few extra contracts that are a little bigger than what he necessarily is worth, and maybe he just hangs around for several years. Again, I do think there's an outside chance with the rushing upside that he goes to the right spot, an injury takes place or something like that, he ends up in the starting role, and maybe he proves some people wrong. Again, for me, just not this quarterback class just is not it. So definitely very, very cautious with Cade. But there is something to be excited about there with when, like you mentioned, he isn't scared to let the ball rip. And he will run and get some touchdowns with his legs as well. So there's some things to be excited about, but there's definitely some things to be concerned about as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. My number 4 is Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU. I told you I'm going to butcher him. I hear him better than I got to hear him a few
Garrett
times.
Nussmeier.
Sorry, I can't read my
There you go. Nope, you're all good.
6'2", 203. He's a big body guy. And one of the things that I did see on a lot of pages that I was reading about him is the way he carries his weight. Yeah, he's only 203, and can he actually hold up to a 17-game NFL season? He's got good velocity on his throws. He gets the ball there in a hurry. He doesn't have a problem gripping and ripping it right down there to it. He gets rid of it fast. He's good throws. Good throws on the moves. He's got good touch on the intermediate routes, and he's got good command of his line. He does read pre-snap pretty well. His weakness is he gets fooled by post-snap disguises. He may read it pre-snap pretty decently and get a good protection, but he does get confused pretty easily with the post-snap disguises. And he's a gambler. He's going to gamble. He's going to throw the ball up there. He's going to give you the 50-50 balls or even the 75-25 balls. He's going to take shots downfield. His pocket movement isn't always the cleanest. And as we get into these quarterbacks here at 4 with me, this is where I'm starting to think that these guys could end up being career backups. Like, I have him listed as a year 2 starter, but I honestly don't know if I completely do believe it. I think this is where you start to talk about, like you said, this draft class is full of guys that, yeah, they've been around, but they're kind of unknown because they didn't make the jump early like some of the other quarterbacks. And I do think with that, this is where we start to see this guy as a career backup. So I don't know if I even believe there is any fantasy relevancy with him. I do see him as fighting for a year 2 starter, but being a backup for the majority of his career.
Yeah, I'll say this. I did leave Garrett Nussmeier off my rankings, as well as you and I's next player are both different between the two of us. But the reason Garrett was left off mine was very similar to the reason Cade is down at number 4. Had the opportunity to grab this draft by the horns and say, hey, I'm the guy down at LSU. Not a good season for Garrett Nussmeier. Had some really, really bright flashes, but also had some really bad games. Just again, when the light shines bright, you want these guys to perform because the light's going to be bright every week in the NFL. And so that's definitely a cause of pessimism for me. I'm sure if I extended this out to my top 7, 8, 9, 10 guys, Garrett Nussmeier would be in there, as well as your next guy that you're getting ready to talk about. But for me, it's just that I had the opportunity to go prove it and did not do so.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is why I say that some of these guys could end up being just career backups. This is kind of, we've hit it a couple of times. This is kind of a class that's going to be a coin flip. Number 5, I got Drew Aller, 6'5", 235. He's got a big frame. And one of the things that he will do is he's going to lower the shoulder and try to get the extra yards. And we saw that it works, and it's fun, and it's exciting to watch. But it's very, very risky in the NFL, as we saw Jackson Dart have 6 times having to go to the blue tent this year, missing a couple games as well. But he will fight for the extra yards. He's got a quick release. He takes care of the ball. He had a 1.19% interception ratio over his 843 career attempts. So he does take care of the ball. He's not going to be a gambler. He'll be a good game manager if you need that. He'll be a good backup whenever your starter is getting hurt or is hurt. And some of his weakness, his short game accuracy was kind of up and down, below average in the NFL. He doesn't hit the screens and the quick outs that well. So he'll definitely have to work on that. His footwork, he tends to throw flat-footed at times. And he's got to work through his progressions better. It's first read, and then I'm gonna, it's collapse, or I'm gonna start to try to take off. He's got to work through the progressions a little bit better in the NFL and move him a little faster. This is the guy that I wasn't sold on. He kind of, in this 5 spot, I had like 4 or 5 names that I could have put in here, and this is the guy I went with just because I do think with the way that he takes care of the ball, he could end up being a good game manager for an NFL team.
Okay, fair enough. Again, very similar reasons for me to have Drew outside of my top 5 as I did for Garrett. Just again, another opportunity to seize the world, and did not take the ownership of that. Penn State had a bad season. Coincidentally enough, Garrett Nussmeier and Drew Allar's former schools will have new head coaches next year, which also speaks volumes about how bad the programs were this year. Because again, expectations are high at those schools, but that's kind of the way this is supposed to go. So for me, it was, again, just a lack of seizing opportunity when it comes to Drew. So, all right, my number 5 guy is the guy that I am by far the most excited about, Brant, and I'm going to say this with a extreme caveat. I've got Taylon Green at my number 5, 6'6", 227 pounds. So a huge dude out of the University of Arkansas, kind of swept the world here by the wayside. 4.36 40 at the NFL Combine. This is a guy, I'm a diehard Mizzou Tigers fan. You can kind of see Truman up there in the top corner there of my screen. But I did watch the Mizzou Arkansas game this year, and I remember thinking to myself, like, who was this under center for Arkansas? That dude's a damn tank, and he's killing us. And he did. He killed Mizzou this year. Only 60% completion rating, so that's definitely a concern. 59 touchdowns, 35 interceptions. Huge red flag there, right? 35 rushing touchdowns in his career. This guy is as likely to be a stud in the NFL at the quarterback position as he is to be converted to a tight end at some point. Very similarly to Felipe Franks, another Arkansas quarterback that had a big frame that came out a few years back that has spent some time with my Atlanta Falcons. So I like Felipe a little more than I probably would otherwise. But again, when you talk about just absolute upside, it's Taylon Green, and he screams upside. Those 35 rushing touchdowns almost are enough to make you forget about the 35 interceptions as well. Honestly, the easy comp would be Anthony Richardson here, but I'm not going to take that easy of a way out. This is Justin Fields to me. This is a guy that he could come in and throw 15 touchdowns in his NFL in a season as an NFL starter, 17 interceptions, and throw 12 rushing touchdowns on to go along with it. Where it's like it was good for fantasy, not so great for the NFL. This guy is somebody that I'm definitely going to be excited about. I'm going to pay attention to. If there's an outside chance he has a path to making a roster and potentially an outside path to having some chance in at some time on the field, I will draft Taylon Green just because if he ever does get a chance to be an NFL starter, you're getting your fantasy points from him running the ball. He's going to run. He can throw the ball a little bit. He's massive. Take up and stand up to some hits. So this is definitely the guy that I'm excited about. And again, yes, I will admit the combine is what got me back in on him, but I did 100% remember watching him in Mizzou and thinking this guy could be a problem. So if you haven't seen him much outside of the 4.36, go watch some of his game film. There's some really, really good or some really, really high highs and some really, really low lows. But if he figures it out, again, very similar to Anthony Richardson, the only difference is Taylon Green started more than just one season. He had some time under his belt at Boise State as well, which is another pretty respectable program. So definitely go look into him if you haven't done so yet.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to. He was a guy that I looked at. I didn't look deep at. But you tell me the stats. I mean, that, like you said, the rushing upside's there. Get him with a good QB coach. Harbaugh with the Giants is a place that you could definitely see him. You saw what they did with Lamar Jackson there, getting him being more accurate after his first couple of years in the NFL, and as not completely calling him a running back anymore. So this is a guy that he gets the right coaching staff. He definitely could make a huge difference.
It kind of almost reminds me a little bit of Josh Allen in college. When you talk about Josh Allen, his huge concern was his accuracy, and he come to the NFL and got that figured out in his first couple of seasons pretty well. So again, landing spot's going to be the big one here. But if he goes someplace where he's got some kind of a path to relevancy, just keep your eye out for him.
Absolutely. Dan comes at us, says, "What's up, guys? What do you think of the Puka news?" We covered it a little bit at the beginning. We'll cover it again here too. It's good for him to go out and seek the help. And we both alluded to it as it could fade into the season, but this is kind of dead time of the NFL. So the news is a little bigger than it probably would have been, if this was, well, it would be pretty big if it was week 2, but if it was opening a free agency, this news might not have been as big, but yeah, it's definitely good for the guy. And it's just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. I also think, kind of the way Brant alluded to, it's bigger story than it probably should be. I will say Puka was definitely spiraling a little bit with all the things that he had been, in the last 6 months or so had going on with the celebrations and things of that nature. So it's definitely going to be a situation that we're going to monitor and we're going to keep an eye on. But I like Brant said, happy for the guy for taking some accountability and getting himself saying, I need some help. I think that's a definite step in the right direction. Again, like we talked about, Dan, prior to this, to the show, like really getting going here, I'm not so worried about like a suspension for him of any kind. But what does concern me is how long does this rehab take? Is this one of those places where he's going to go and say, hey, I need 6 months committed to nothing but this rehab? Football is going to come second to getting myself and my life back in order, which again, if that's what needs to happen for Puka, then I'm, cool, be it. But I don't want to see anybody in the fantasy aspect get left out to dry, basically, because we don't know. So just keep an eye on it. I think it's probably just because of the time of the season it is right now, is why it's taking the world by storm. But hopefully much to do about not at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Got Kevin coming at us saying, Bo, what do you or who do you like at quarterback for your Falcons, Tua or Penix? Honestly, Kevin, I'll say this. I don't think either one of them are the starter there after this coming season. I think we end up with a pretty high draft pick again, unfortunately, and try our luck at a quarterback in the 2027 draft. I've ridden my emotions. At one point, I was upset about Tua. The next moment, I wasn't. He's basically free for the Falcons. We're going to be paying Kirk Cousins more this year than we will be paying Tua by a substantial amount. So obviously, I'm still optimistic, cautiously optimistic about Penix. I'd like to see him stay healthy. So I'm going to say I think Penix is still the guy, but I'm not mad to see Tua in town either. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, be a definitely interesting QB battle. I know Penix won't be healthy at the start of the year. So it'll be, about mid-year when we start to see that battle go. I wish the best for both of them because I do like both the guys. Obviously, I was a Penix fan coming from Washington, so I'm rooting for him to take that over and continue to be your guys' starter after this year.
Yeah, Tua is our Sam Darnold. So,
there you go, man. That's all you need. Dan asked, when are we gonna be rolling out Milroe? Probably not this year. If we do roll them out, it'll probably be next year. I think it's Sam's. We have an opt out of Sam after year 3. I think it is, or before year 3. Milroe's a guy that I wasn't sold on. I got a little more excited after we drafted him because I watched a little more. I read a little bit more about him. He's doing a lot of work in this offseason from what I've seen on some of the beat reporters there in Seattle. I wish we would have got to see more of him this year. But unfortunately, he was the emergency QB for most of the year. I don't think we roll him out anytime soon. I honestly don't know if he ever will actually be the Seahawks starter, but I'd be interested to see.
I just wanted to put this one up here real quick. Kevin's just razzing you, but I share my office 5 days a week at work with a guy who's a Packers fan that has made comments very similar to this that are very.
Yeah, but the guy in the office says he can block Parsons.
This is true. This is true also.
We got
No.
Emmanuel Wilson.
No.
We didn't really get anybody. He had good flashes in Green Bay. No, they're probably Seattle. What Seattle's going to do? What Seattle's always does is we got the 32 pick. We're going to trade out of that. We're going to get another second round, and then about mid-second round is where we're going to draft a running back, just like we did with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. They'll draft one like they always do. They only have 4 picks this year, but John's never happy with 4. He's going to want 6 to 10 by the end of the draft. So I think that they're going to draft one.
I'm somewhat optimistic that Charbonnet's the guy this year, that they just put filler players around him. I do think there'll be a rookie running back taken, but I don't think it'll be anybody of note. I think it'll be Charbonnet's backfield this year.
Oh, I 100% agree, but him tearing that ACL so late, you never know.
Yeah, for sure.
How
they're going to add. They're going to add, but I still think it'll be Charbonnet.
The person that came to visit, I actually was a little optimistic and kind of wanted to see him play because he probably could have stayed healthy just long enough for Charbonnet to come back. Najee did come up for a visit in Seattle, but did leave without a contract. I was like, well, if we sign him, at least maybe he could be healthy for the first 8 to 10 weeks until Charbonnet comes back.
Yeah. All right, guys. So on to the biggest news of the night. Brant and I have been kind of toying with this idea back and forth for a little while. We started this podcast together in my garage several years back. And it's just getting to be too much. Brant's got a busy life doing his coaching. I've got kids starting to get a little bit busier too. So probably only a few weeks left of this podcast. Just want to get you guys prepared for that. April Fools. Just kidding. We'll be back next week with our running back rankings coming at you guys, getting you ready for the draft. Again, 23 days out from today. We will be doing some live coverage of the draft as well in some form. Stay tuned for that news as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You got me a little rattled because I was like, wait a minute, we did not discuss this at all. So I'm like, did I miss a text message? I'm getting ready to ring my phone. Yeah, we'll be live during the draft. It will be the Fantasy Holics will jump on and help out with that too as well. Join us, ask questions about these guys. We do our research as they get drafted on some of them because a lot of times you see some reaches and stuff like that, but we definitely will have our instant feedback on it as well. I think that does it for the quarterbacks. Like you said, next week we're going to hit some running backs, and as always, stay hungry,
stay fat, my friends.